And the random generation that I got here relate to concepts that are very interesting, but I haven't spent too much time on in the notes or on exams. But it's something that I want to incorporate more in the future, so it's good for you guys to know. So given a nominal interest rate of 10%, when would you earn the highest after-tax real interest rate? Well, actually, I just did this. But if we go through it, 10% is what you're getting taxed on. So if you have a tax rate of 40%, you keep 60% of that 10%. So 6% minus the 4, you'll have 2% as your real after-tax real interest rate. 2% here, 10, you keep 5% of that 10 minus 2%. 3% is what remains. 10, you keep 7% minus 5, 2% was what remains. 10, 20%, so you keep 8% minus 6%, 2% is what remains. So what's important to note here is that it's not just inflation that's important, and it's not just the tax rate that's important. Both of them combined is important in telling you how well you will do, how your well-being will increase over time. Because if you have a really high nominal interest rate, but at the same time you have a really high tax rate and a quite substantially high inflation, you might think, well, I'm taxed at 50%, I keep 5% of that, I'm doing great. But if inflation was 5 or 6%, you'd actually be losing money or breaking even. So it's something to keep in mind. How to calculate this as well: you put money into an account and earn real interest rate of 10%. It's rare that you'll know in real interest rate terms. So this would be a nominal normally. So nominal is real plus inflation. So 10 plus 4 would be my nominal interest rate. And my taxes depend on my nominal interest rate. So if I were to multiply 60% of 14%, I would get 8.4%. And when I remove the inflation component, I'm left with 4.4% as my after-tax real interest rate. What does the quantity theory of money try to explain? So if I recall, the quantity theory of money tells me that the amount of money in circulation times the velocity, so mv is equal to py, the amount of money in circulation times the velocity, unless there's a change in technology, doesn't change, is equal to P times Y, the price level times the level of output, or GDP in a certain way. So if the velocity of money doesn't change and we increase the amount of money in circulation, that may be caused by an increase in the level of output. But typically, if output doesn't really change much, because even though the economy is growing, let's say it's only growing at 2%, if you decide to increase the money level by 10%, or any percentage that's above 2, and that V doesn't change, we know that this increase in money is going to lead to inflation. It's going to lead to an increase in the price level. So there's this relationship between money and price level or inflation. Relationship between unemployment and inflation. We don't talk about unemployment here. The determinants of relative prices in the economy is not mentioned here. The relationship between the quantity of money and the price level is what I just mentioned. M is on one side, price level is on the other side. And how inflation determines economic growth is not mentioned at all by this equation. Which statement best explains why governments may prefer an inflation tax to some other kind of tax? So there's different means for the government to raise money. Taxation is one, borrowing from the population is another. But in some rural countries where people don't necessarily put their money in that country if they earn money, so in a small, poor country, the people who have money may be investing in America or other parts of the world. And taxing people may be very hard if it's really hard to collect taxes from people, because a lot of people don't have a fixed address and they do a lot of things on the black market. So why some governments may prefer to use inflation tax is that it's just easier to impose. If you print more money and it leads to this reduction in the value of everyone's money, but it leads to more money in the government's hands to work on different projects, it's just easier. The inflation tax reduces inflation as false. It actually creates inflation. That's why it's called an inflation tax. The inflation tax reduces the real cost of government expenditure. That's false. Taxing people directly or borrowing would actually be better. The inflation tax falls mainly on high-income individuals. No, it falls mainly on people who have money as cash and that they're not sheltered from inflation. So if you're very rich and you own a lot of property or your money is in other countries' currency, the inflation tax won't hurt you so much. Your boss gives you an increase in the number of dollars you earn per hour from $11 to $12. How does this change your nominal and real wages? Well, we know that this is a nominal increase in your wages, so nominal would go up. For real wages, we need to know what happened to inflation over this time period. If the cost of living has gone up more than the percentage of from 11 to 12%, it means that your real wage has gone down. But if it's gone up by less than this, so let's say it was an increase of 2% inflation, well, an increase of 2% of $10 would be like 20 cents. So $11 would be 22 cents. $11.22 is smaller than $12, so real wages are going up. So the increase in pay makes your real wage increase. If your real wage rose by a greater percentage than the price level, then your nominal wage also increase. Now, nominal wage we know will increase for sure. The increase in pay makes your nominal wage increase. If your nominal wage rose by a greater percentage than the price level, so here this close to 10% increase, a little bit less, is greater than, let's say, 2%, then your real wage will have increased. So this part here saying decrease is wrong, here decrease is wrong, and it's actually flipped. So this increase in pay makes your nominal wage increase. Yes, if your nominal wage rose by a greater percentage than the price level, then your real wage also increase. This is the right answer. So hopefully that clarifies this chapter. As I said, some of these questions on after-tax real interest rates you may not see on an exam, but they're interesting to know for future investments.